Star Wars: A New Hope celebrates its 46th anniversary this year, and since its release, Star Wars has been one of the biggest movie franchises over the last half century. In this video we will look at how much money each of the 12, yes 12, Star Wars films have earned at the box office, with inflation adjusted figures. So no, The Force Awakens earning over $2 billion in 2015 is not actually Star Wars' highest grossing film. Without any further ado, let's begin. Number 12. In last place is Star Wars: The Clone Wars.
No, I'm the one with enthusiasm. You're the one with the experience, which I'm looking forward to learning from.
Before the much beloved Clone Wars TV show, Dave Filoni and George Lucas created the Clone Wars animated film, which debuted Filoni's favourite character, Ahsoka Tano. The film was much maligned, with rather wooden looking animation, and action set piece after action set piece, with little emotional stakes. The Clone Wars had a box office return of $95 million in today's money, $68 million in 2008 when it was released. Number 11. Solo: A Star Wars Story.
I might be the only person. Who knows what you really are.
I'm sure this comes as little surprise to many, but the spin-off that nobody asked for, Solo: A Star Wars Story, did rather poorly at the box office. With extensive reshoots, Solo has a joint second most expensive production budget of any Star Wars film, costing $275 million. Solo's inflation adjusted box office is $474 million. Number 10. Attack of the Clones.
Begun this Clone War has.
Released in 2002, Attack of the Clones had a stronger opening weekend box office than Episode 1 of Phantom Menace, but had an overall worldwide box office of 40% less than Episode 1. The Attack of the Clones is certainly viewed as the ugly sister of the prequel trilogy. From infamous dialogue,
I don't like sand.
A lot of exposition,
Hasn't been a full-scale war since the formation of the Republic.
and a love story between Padme Amidala and Anakin Skywalker that felt rather forced.
What are you talking about?
I love you.
The battle between the Jedi, droids, and clones was a great way to end off the movie, but many deem it to be the worst movie of the entire Skywalker saga, and the box office results reflect that. Attack of the Clones made $656 million in 2002, which when adjusted for inflation comes to $1.1 billion. Number 9. The Rise of Skywalker.
People keep telling me they know me. No one does.
The film to close out the sequel trilogy, The Rise of Skywalker, managed to do the impossible. It united the Star Wars fanbase, who came together to deliver a unanimous verdict that The Rise of Skywalker was shit. Palpatine returned and died again, Rey was revealed to be Palpatine's cloned granddaughter, and Kylo Ren came back to the light side and then died by transferring his life force to Rey. With enough plot to fill an entire trilogy, Episode 9 ended the Skywalker saga with a whimper. Grossing $1.272 billion, Rise of Skywalker sits in the bottom quarter of Star Wars films' box office returns. Number 8. Revenge of the Sith.
Do what must be done. Do not hesitate. Show no mercy.
The conclusion of the once hated, but now rather fondly remembered, prequel trilogy, Revenge of the Sith, did better than Attack of the Clones, but worse than The Phantom Menace, in terms of box office results. From the heartbreaking events of Order 66, Obi-Wan and Anakin's fight on Mustafar, the opening space battle, and the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise.
You ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
For many, Revenge of the Sith was by far the best of the prequel trilogy, while still not quite living up to the heights of the originals. Revenge of the Sith grossed $848 million at the box office, which when adjusted for inflation comes to $1.317 billion. Number 7. Rogue One.
There is a 97.6% chance of failure. He means well.
In 2016, in between the release of The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, the Rogue One anthology film was set just before A New Hope. Rogue One was different to what we had seen before on a big screen from Star Wars. Without any lightsabers until Darth Vader's hall scene in the last 5 minutes of the film, Rogue One followed a ragtag group of rebels who no one except from hardcore Star Wars fans can remember the names of, as they steal the Death Star plans. The first 2 movies from Disney Lucasfilm turned out to be real financial successes, with The Force Awakens and then Rogue One just 1 year later, bringing in over $1 billion in 2016, a tidy $1.333 billion when adjusted for inflation. Number 6. Return of the Jedi. The first original trilogy film on the list, Return of the Jedi comes in at the midway point, providing one of the most glorious scenes from Star Wars, perhaps even from cinematic history, with Darth Vader saving his son and destroying the Emperor once and for all. Well, until the Rise of Skywalker. Jabba's palace, the second Death Star run, and of course, the Ewoks. Return of the Jedi was viewed as a great conclusion to the original trilogy, and made $482 million in 1983, which when adjusted for inflation, comes to $1.468 billion. Number 5. The Last Jedi.
And I need help.
The most controversial of the bunch, The Last Jedi was a middle film in a sequel trilogy sandwiched between J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, with some fantastic moments such as Kylo Ren killing Snoke and Luke Skywalker taking on the entire First Order, but these moments were ultimately subverted by Luke still stuck on his island, only being a Force projection and then eventually dying, and Kylo Ren after killing Snoke just to take over as Supreme Chancellor. Oh, and of course, the planet Canto Bight, and this scene.
Saving what we love.
The Last Jedi was a critical and financial success, albeit an incredibly divisive film, in which many Star Wars fans are still annoyed about over 5 years later. Making $1.331 billion on release, and when adjusted for inflation, that comes to $1.647 billion. Number 4. The Phantom Menace.
Anakin Skywalker, meet Obi-Wan Kenobi.
The run-up to The Phantom Menace was incredible. 16 years after Return of the Jedi, Star Wars was hitting theatres again. Unfortunately, Episode 1 had just as many great moments as it did poor ones. From Jar Jar Binks to Darth Maul, from the grand space and land battle to the 15-minute long pod racing scene. The build-up to and anticipation for Phantom Menace was palpable, with tens of thousands of people waiting outside the cinema for hours, hoping to see the Phantom Menace on release day. This excitement is seen through the box office results, grossing $1.27 billion in 1999, which is $400 million more than Attack of the Clones and $200 million more than Revenge of the Sith. In today's money, The Phantom Menace grossed $1.87 billion at the box office. Now, on to the top 3. In third place, we have Empire Strikes Back.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Seen by many as the best Star Wars movie, Empire Strikes Back had the reveal of Darth Vader as Luke's father, introduced Boba Fett, Yoda, and Lando, and started off with the outstanding battle between the Empire and the Rebels on the snowy planet Hoth. Empire Strikes Back solidified Star Wars' position as a huge franchise, and not just a one-off fluke with A New Hope. Empire managed to be one of the rare occasions where the second movie was equal, if not better, than the original. In 1980, Empire Strikes Back made a worldwide box office of $549 million, which when adjusted for inflation comes to over $2 billion. Number 2. The Force Awakens.
I will finish what you started.
Matching or even topping the excitement that preceded The Phantom Menace, The Force Awakens was the first Star Wars film in 10 years, since Revenge of the Sith. Disney bought Star Wars in 2012, and they really couldn't have got off to a better start. Was The Force Awakens a carbon copy of A New Hope? Yes. Did it tease questions that would never get answered, or would get answered poorly? Yes.
A good question for another time.
In hindsight, it's easy to look back negatively to the sequel trilogy films because of what it ended up becoming, but make no doubt, The Force Awakens was an incredibly successful soft reboot for the Star Wars franchise, grossing over $2 billion in 2012, which when adjusted for inflation comes to $2.641 billion. And finally, number 1. The most successful Star Wars film when it comes to box office receipts by an absolute mile is the original Star Wars, retrospectively changed to Episode 4, Star Wars: A New Hope.
And win, Darth. If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine.
A New Hope was a success story that we will most likely never see again, with a modest independent film budget and, save for Alec Guinness, a completely unknown cast. A New Hope redefined the science fiction genre and is so ingrained into our culture, and its importance to cinema, entertainment, and childhoods cannot be underestimated. The film, to kick off a long time ago, a galaxy far, far away, made $775 million in 1977, and when adjusted for inflation, this comes to $3,879 million. So the first film in the Star Wars franchise turned out to be its most successful. So there we have it, the inflation-adjusted list of all 12 Star Wars films, from under $100 million with The Clone Wars to almost $4 billion with A New Hope. The original trilogy comes 1st, 3rd and 6th place. The prequels come 4th, 8th and 10th. The sequel trilogy comes in 2nd, 5th and 9th, and the spin-offs come 12th, 11th and 7th. So what do you make of this list? Are you surprised by the results? And what are your favourite Star Wars films? Let me know in the comments below. For me, it's a toss-up between Empire and Return of the Jedi, with Revenge of the Sith coming in joint 2nd with A New Hope. I review all the best films and shows, do occasional video essays like this one, and have the weekly podcast, This Week in Film. So if you enjoyed this video, and any of that sounds good to you, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you, and see you again.